hopefully everyone can see the slide. In case anyone is wondering what the heck where you are and what the heck this is about, this is me and Steve Johnson, whom I will give a very kind introduction in just a second. We're going to be talking about the role of PM in the age of AI. We're going to cut through the hype and the chaos that I'm sure you're all feeling, and we're going to try and get real on this. This is a huge crowd, by the way. I think we got almost 150 people signed up. Now, hopefully I don't know if they'll all join, but we got 150 people joining for this thing. This, frankly, is easily a 3 hour topic, but we don't have 3 hours. We got 60 minutes. So buckle up, folks. Get comfy. This is going to be going fast and furious, but we'll also have a lot of questions. Feel free to light up the chat. So just some housekeeping stuff. Agenda is very simple. We're going to go through some quick introductions. We'll go through the main topic and discussions. We'll pause for Q&A. We'll definitely leave time at the end for Q&A. If you are not talking, please remain muted. So, if you got the dog barking or the vacuum cleaner or whatever, we don't want to hear it. We love your dogs and your pets and your kids, but we don't want to hear them right now. So please mute unless it's your turn to talk. And to that point, feel free to light up the chat. I will do my best to monitor it. We will pause for questions. We'll definitely have time at the end for questions as well. Or raise your virtual hand. There's a button at the bottom if you're not familiar with Zoom, where you can kind of raise a virtual hand and then just be patient, and I will call on you in turn. Feel free to introduce yourself in the chat, exchange LinkedIn's if you want. I get this question every single time, so I'm going to say this 3 times. Yes, is being recorded. Yes, this is being recorded. Yes, this is being recorded, and it will be sent out. If you are a paid subscriber of my newsletter, you'll also get the transcript and maybe some additional resources if I get time to produce them, like templates and study guides and cool stuff like that. All right. Um, I normally don't do this, but this was such a big crowd. I thought this was fascinating on two points. So first of all, this is a sample of where you all are coming from. So this is really turned out to be a global event. You are all over the world, from the US, where Steve and I sit, to Australia and New Zealand. So I don't know if anyone from Australia and New Zealand is actually dialed in. It's probably middle of the night, or you just want to get the replay. But anyways, I also plugged this into Gemini. And I said, give me a map of all the countries that people have registered from and highlight and label them. And this is what it spit out here. Oh, you can't see it. There you go. Sorry about that. I thought I was flipping the slides and I'm not. There we go. Okay. Here we are. Now you're able to see it, right? You can see the map on the left. That's what it spit out, which I thought was really apropos given our topic, right? There's all this push to learn and be experts in AI. And well, there you go. All right. That's the new map of the world, the new world order. Welcome. I don't know about you, but I'm dying to go to Israel. And I think, Steve, you mentioned you've been in Germany, right?
Yes, I very much enjoy going to Germany.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. Right.
And it
Who
appears
does?
that you and I live in India.
Yeah, yeah. It's about damn time. And you
Mm.
know what? We finally got Greenland. Sorry, that's the only political statement I'll make. I'm gonna move on. We'll keep it going. All right. So, for those of you who don't know, who are meeting me for the first time, who the heck am I? My name is Shardul. I've been around for, I don't know, I've been doing this for around 30 plus years. Product management, entrepreneurship, all outside of Silicon Valley. I've worked across multiple industries, multiple different types of companies of very different sizes. I founded a few companies myself, including Product Camp DC. Um, and I also, fun fact, I perform and teach improv. So if you want to talk to me about that, happy to. I love it. We'll never give it up. It's changed my life. You can get in touch with me through LinkedIn. There's my email below. There's my URL, streetsmartproductmanager.com. And what I focus on now is just helping PMs, helping product managers like you gain the influence, respect, and impact you deserve. That's a little bit about my newsletter. People seem to like it, so you can go and check it out. Maybe you might like it. There is a paid tier as well. I'm running a special, 20% off if you subscribe by Sunday, but there's also a free tier, so you can take advantage of that. Um, we have a number of events. One of the things we're doing is we're building a pretty active street smart community, as I like to call it. There is a group chat Q&A with me tomorrow. If you're a paid subscriber, Inner Circle member, it's free. Otherwise, you're welcome to sign up yourself. It's a group chat. Ask me whatever questions you want, and I'll answer them. If you're in the job market, you want some snap resume feedback from a hiring manager like me. Um, I'm doing that next week. So whether you're going for a management role or you're just an individual product manager, and we have a series of really exciting events coming up. We've got one with Michael Smart where we're going to talk about connecting your work to outcomes. We got one with Ryan Cantwell, who's the host of the Product Porch podcast. You should check it out. I was on it yesterday. Super fun. We're going to be talking about product market fit. Um, and why it's overrated. Spoiler. Ala Stolpnik, we're going to be talking about PRDs. There's a lot of chatter about are PRDs relevant now in the age of AI? Well, we think so, but here's what works. Sam Greenwood, we're going to talk about stakeholder management, EQ, imposter syndrome, stress, the softer side of stuff, the human side. Matt LeMay, author of Impact First Product Teams. We're going to be doing a live feature impact estimation challenge. So he and I are going to actually like try and estimate features, the impact of features, right? And do that live. And then we've got our PM Exchange Roundtable. We did the first one earlier this week. It went really well. So with that, enough about me and all of that. Let me talk about my co-host today, Steve, because he's awesome. Whoops, sorry, I'm getting a notification. All right, here we go. Okay. All right. So if you're not me and you're not talking, please mute. We love your dogs and your pets and your cats and your kids, but we don't want to hear them right now. All right. So Steve Johnson, he's CEO and co-founder of Product Growth Leaders. He is an author, speaker, and product coach. He uses modern methods to help product organizations move products from ideas to market. His approach is based on the belief that minimal process and simple templates result in nimble product teams. He was a sales engineer in the 80s and then became one of the first batch of product managers in the early 90s, I think before product management was even a thing or people people knew about it. He's held executive roles in product management and marketing. Prior to founding Product Growth Leaders, he was vice president at Pragmatic Institute. I'm sure many of you have heard of Pragmatic Institute. He holds the distinction of certified product manager. Sorry, excuse me, certified product master. He was also one of the original architects of the Quartz Open framework, and he'll talk a little bit about that today. A non-proprietary framework for product management that's free to use and share. He has been, as far as I know, one of the longest time advocates for product management, good product management, serving as an executive advisor to many technical product organizations and industry associations. In 2020, he was awarded one of only 10 51331 coins, if I got that right, for contributing to the best practices of product management. He was also one of the earliest and biggest supporters of product camps worldwide, including the one I founded, Product Camp DC. He was at the very first event we had back in 2010. Um, and he came to every single one of our events, for which I am eternally grateful. And now I'm really glad to call him my friend. Uh, this is also his book. You should go and get it. It's on Amazon. Steve, welcome. Thanks so much for collaborating. Anything else you want to add about your background?
Well, sure. As you were telling that, I was remembering something else. I may have been one of the first product management bloggers. And I started because I got an email from a guy who said, "Could you explain this thing more fully?" And I replied in email. And a week later, I got basically the same question. And I replied again in email. And then the third time I got the request, I went, shoot, I should write this down. And so I created a website to put these articles in that I was composing as emails. And one of my friends said, "Hey, man, I really love your blog." And I'm like, what the hell's a blog? So
Yeah.
my first blog post was in 1999. And it's funny when I see some of the ridiculous job postings nowadays where they say things like, 25 years experience with social media. Um, I may be one of the only people who actually has 25 years experience in social media.
Yeah, there you
I
go.
do have an album on Spotify of original songs. My daughter is a director of product management, and my son is a professional musician. And some of you may not recognize me because I shaved my beard last year.
There you go.
Oh yeah,
That's
and I wrote a book.
and and that there's a picture of you.
There we
Wow.
go. Old me and new me wearing apparently the same shirt.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Funny thing is, I think I actually remember this shirt. You probably
Well,
came
it
to
was
one of
kind
the
of my
product camps.
it was kind of my uniform for teaching and product camps. And what happened, by the way, during COVID is my mustache and beard turned gray, but the hair on top of my head did not.
There
So
you
it
go.
was like one of these things is not like the other. So,
Yeah, there you go. All right, folks. So with that, now you know who we are. Let's get into the topic of today. Kind of a crisis, right? So PMs and leaders are struggling. That's what we hear. You can see it on LinkedIn, you can see it on YouTube, you can see it on social media, and you just talk to them. Interviews are full of these vague puzzles and AI demo requests, vibe coding challenges. The hiring guidance is inconsistent and chaotic. The funny thing is that I talk to product leaders and hiring managers, and they tell me they're confused as well, right? It's like, hey, what are the best practices for hiring PMs now? Has the world changed? Are we supposed to be doing something different? And the role expectations seem to be constantly shifting. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but I've seen on LinkedIn things like product managers are now going to be product engineers, whatever the heck that means, or this full stack PM, which is one of my favorite pet peeves. Or like you have to be able to do prompt engineering. At the same time, there are other PMs who are kind of still stuck in this new old world of like being glorified delivery and release managers, right? Not able to find the time or the scope to be able to do the real product management work, the strategic work, talking to customers, doing those sort of things. So what the heck is going on, right? And one of the things that is really important that I think for all of us is a lot of time the role is defined in terms of specific functional or technical skills and tools, but that is not what the role is. That's a means to an end, right? So it's really important we understand what the role is about. But here's a sampling, if you go backwards in time, of skill sets and tools. So today they'll say, oh, vibe coding, learning AI tools, and I'm not busting on them. Maybe they are important, maybe they are important, right? But you know, if you went and you said, "Hey, I know Agile, I know Jira," that's not a differentiating skill set, right? Nowadays, it's sort of just like, yeah, kind of like everybody does it, right? That's not going to differentiate you. That's not going to tell anyone about what you actually do. And you go backwards in time, when PowerPoint and spreadsheets came up, that was the new thing, right? So sure, we always got to keep our tool sets and our skills up to date, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the role itself is changing, right? And so that's really important. We're gonna talk more about that. So I'll actually throw it back over to you now, Steve, because any of those these are your slides, and I'll try and click through. But yeah, I'll hand over to you to start talking about this role clarity business.
well, it seems like I've spent my entire career um, trying to get people to understand what product management is and is not. And I'll sometimes show this slide, and it's hysterical. It always gets a laugh. And this movie is 25 years old, and yet apparently everybody has seen it, and you totally should, unless you don't like rough language, in which case you probably shouldn't. But yeah, ask 10 product managers, what do you do here? And you're going to get 10 or 12 different answers. And some of the answers we get are pretty broken. If you go to the next slide, we found this on Reddit just a few weeks ago, and it's such a sad commentary. The poster said, "I've been struggling to keep my head above water. I have too many tasks and no guidance on how to execute. I'm terrified I'll be fired because I don't know what I should be doing." And so we hire these engineers, or we hire these product owners, or we hire these UX people and say, we're going to train you. And then we don't. Or at best, we train them in Scrum. And so we end up, yeah, next slide. We end up being the janitor of the product, cleaning up messes made by others. Or on the next slide, it feels like we're the firefighter. It seems like a whole culture of sales making a commitment we can't keep, and we're the ones who have to put out the fire. And then, you hear sometimes people say, well, you're like the CEO of the product, and that feels really good, except you don't have the ability to make any business decisions. Like, can I outsource to a different development organization to increase my scope? Oh no. Can I reject contracts for excessive discounting? Oh no, we can't have that. And I was talking on the next slide, I was talking to a VP of product management at a well known financial firm. And he described the job as barista, that a
Hmm.
product manager's job is to take orders and run them, write them down on a piece of paper and run them back to the kitchen where the developers will, cook it up and then bring it back to the customer. And, I think no wonder no wonder it's frustrating when you go interviewing for a job and you hear people saying, we need you to work with sales and support and marketing and development. And nowhere in that conversation is anything about understanding the customer's needs.
I think I hate that definition more than even CEO of the product.
Yeah, barista or chef or waiter, yeah, for sure. And
Yeah.
and the reason for all of this is in my work over these years, these decades, only 21% of organizations have clearly defined the role. And Shardul, you were saying something about this a moment ago. I was doing a roles and responsibilities workshop, and a woman joined the group late. And so we took a break, and I went over and I said, who are you? What are you doing here? And she said, oh, I'm from HR. And my first thought was, oh, shoot, who have I offended?
Mm.
I've already been ratted out to HR for being, politically incorrect. And I said, yeah, why? And she said, oh, I've heard the session is going really well. And we don't know what product managers do either. So
Mm.
as we were going through this role stuff, I'm like, who does this and who does this and who does this? And in many cases, I had to say, in this particular one, every time the customer was brought up, somebody in the room would say, oh, that's sales' responsibility. And I'm like, but sales isn't talking to the customer base. They're talking to the prospects. And finally, I kind of lost my temper and said, there's nothing we're going to talk about today that is the responsibility of sales. Their
You know,
job is to sell what we have to people who have money to buy it.
it reminds me, Steve, I was at one company and so HR contacts me and says, hey, so we need to do some role definition, different levels of PMs, build a career ladder, right? And they
Yeah.
sent a spreadsheet, this really complicated spreadsheet with lots of rows and lots of columns and all this sort of stuff with different levels. And your classic like product manager one and product manager two and product manager three, with the Roman
Mm-hmm.
numerals and then senior PM and all these fancy titles. And then this whole complicated like rows of different descriptions, right? And it was terrible. It was absolutely terrible. And I asked like, where did you get this from? And they were like, and basically the way they positioned was, we just need your sign off on this. I said, where'd you get this from? And they said, oh, one of them said we got it off the internet. Another one said I got it from my previous job. And that's what I and the product leader there came up with. And I said, she said, we just need your sign off because, we got to put this into the system. It was a Wednesday by Friday. And I'm like, I'm not signing this.
Mm.
I'm going to rewrite this
But
completely.
Shardul, they can't put it on the internet if it's not true, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's right. Exactly. Exactly.
So here's what product roles should be doing. Click. And here's what everybody else thinks we should be doing. And Shardul had a meeting a couple of weeks ago with Rich Mironov, and he and I were on a panel together. And somebody asked, what should product be doing? And he and I were kind of eyeballing each other, who's going to go first? And then somebody jumped in and said, product management does everything that no one else wants to do. I'm like, that is not a good job definition. We're not the glue or the go-to resource or the SME, or actually, we should not be doing prototyping and design because that is solutioning. We're not supposed to be doing project management, QA, sales support. I mean, look at this long list of things that we expect of product management. Keep going. So what no one else wants to do, or what we don't have staffing for in other departments, does not define the scope of product management. And that's why we feel like Stretch Armstrong. We're being pulled in all these different directions, and there's a lot of frustration being shared on LinkedIn and Reddit, in the places I go. And I do remember I got off of the product management thing on Facebook, but there was a post in Facebook where somebody said, what is your favorite prototyping tool? And people said, Figma and Balsamic, and they listed out a few things. And I listed a qualified designer is my favorite design tool.
Mm.
Next slide.
Is that what this guy's called? Stretch Armstrong? Is
Stretch
that
Armstrong. Yeah, available from Amazon.
all
Your
right?
grandkids will love it.
All right, there you go, folks. Got a good tip for you guys to keep the grandkids
It's been around
or your
since the
nieces and
60s.
nephews happy. You can be the popular uncle or aunt. There you go.
There we go. And it just seems like chaos. The places I go, they're like, we don't know what our responsibilities are. We don't have a process. We don't understand the scope of our role. And that's certainly what we're going to talk about, I think, next.
Yeah. Yeah. So depressing slide there, right? But like from what I've experienced, there's a real cost to this confusion, right? I mean, it results in really poor hiring practices. I have lost track of just in the last 18 months the number of PMs I have talked to who have come out of jobs or they got into a job and then realized afterwards that it was a disaster. It was not what they signed up for. Or product leaders getting disappointed because they haven't done the things that what Steve was talking about, where they haven't defined role clarity. It creates real anxiety and uncertainty for product managers, broken career paths, and then teams get misaligned, right? Because if expectations are not being set properly with the product management team, how are expectations going to be set with those who collaborate with product managers, right? And most importantly, it results in a lack of credibility and trust in product management. So back to that earlier slide you guys saw that Steve had, where this is everyone else's expectation. You're the janitor or you're the one who does everything else that they don't want to do. There's no way you can meet those expectations, right? And so then that's when people start saying, we're not getting what we need to out of product management. We're not getting any real value. And the people who suffer then are individuals like me and you in our careers, in our lives, and customers. I believe one of the big reasons why we all do this product management, it's a hard job. Why the hell would you want to do it? It's really hard. Well, we love our customers. I mean, I've never had a conversation with a product manager who it doesn't express love for their customers, right? That's why we want to solve problems, real problems in the marketplace, right? And customers then get impacted because we are the voice of those customers, right? So there's a real impact. So what I want to take a few minutes. And again, we're going to go back and forth, Steve and I. I'm going to start first, and I want to just reset, re-level set on what is product management. Okay, just going to go back to basics. So when you really boil it down to understand that this is the way I understand it, there's two conditions that need to be met for a product to be successful. Okay, we've got to create value. Create value means our product has to create value for our customers. It needs to relieve pain. It needs to solve a problem, enable them to complete some job, deliver some kind of a desired outcome, right, for those customers. We need to capture value, which means we need to have a process in which we capture some of that value that we're creating for customers back into the business. Again, we're talking about commercial enterprises, for-profit businesses here, right? We can have a whole different conversation about nonprofits if you want in a different meeting, but right now we're talking about that, which means we have to generate revenue, okay? And then we need to deliver value, which means we need to have a process in which we deliver that value to customers, how the customer gets access to our product, how they use it, how they get ongoing support. Pretty simple and straightforward when you boil it down. And so there's really like two conditions that we're constantly trying to meet. The first one is value or the value equation. This means we have to create more value than we capture back in terms of revenue. So the customer must feel like they're getting more value from our solution than they're paying for it. Because if they're not willing to pay for it, then frankly, we don't have a business. It's as simple as that, right? I love to tell this story. I had to take trash out. I live in a house. Twice a week, I gotta roll the stupid trash bin out to the curbside. As you can tell, I'm not a fan of doing this, but I gotta do it because nobody else in my house will do it. And if you came to me and you said, you know what, Shardul, I'm gonna do that for you. I'm gonna take that off your hands. I'll do it for you. I'll come in the evening, roll it out, and the next morning I'll come and roll it back into your garage. Right? And I'll be like, that's great. Love it. Thank you so much. Great. Pay me 50 bucks a week. No, I'm not gonna pay you 50 bucks a week. Pay me 10 bucks a week. No, I'm not going to pay you 10 bucks a week. I'm not going to pay you anything for that. Now, if you decide to do it, guess what? You're running a charity, but you don't have a product or a service, right? So that's what's really, really important. And so everything we do, okay, has to deliver against that goal. And the other condition is what I call the viability equation, which means our ability to deliver, excuse me, deliver that value has to cost less than our ability to capture it. So it's got to be viable for the business, okay? We are doing these things either directly or indirectly. I know some product managers work on things that may not directly generate, like it's not a directly priced item or directly generating revenue, but believe me, whatever you're doing has to ultimately, even in a dotted line fashion, tie back to this. So if any of this sounds familiar, it should be because it's basically revenue minus cost equals profit, right? No revenue, no growth, no profit, no business. It's as simple as that. So we are responsible, product management responsible for maximizing both of these, value and viability. Okay. And we're constantly doing this. So product management is responsible for the business growth of the product. I believe it is not a builder role. It is not a developer role. It is a business growth role for the product. Now, a big part of what we do is build stuff. We build new products, we build features, we build capabilities, sure, right? There's a whole go-to-market aspect, which we'll talk about a little bit later, as Steve's going to go into that. He's got a brilliant framework for that. Business growth of a product is made possible by sustainably and continuously delivering monetizable customer value. A lot of people out there will talk about, we got to create user value, we got to create customer value. Yes, back to my garbage can example. Yeah, sure, but remember, ultimately the customer has to be willing to pay for it. And if they don't pay for it, if there isn't some ROI at the end of the day for what we're doing with our products, you don't have a product, right? So that's what I mean by monetizable customer value. So when you look at our job, when you just boil it down at a fundamental level, the primary job of a product manager is to drive sustainable business growth. And the way we do that is by continuously delivering monetizable customer value. And so that becomes our key performance metric, right? Maybe not at an individual feature or like I'm not talking about a backlog Jira ticket level, but in a nutshell, overall, we are constantly trying to deliver return on invested capital. The business is investing capital into our product, into our feature, into whatever it is we're doing. We are the custodians of making sure we're delivering some kind of a return on that, right? Whoops, sorry. So everything we do, every time we torture a spreadsheet with our glorious scorecards to prioritize our features, wait time, confidence times effort and all that, every time we're sweating what to do now versus next versus later, every time we're trying to force rank our backlog, every time we sit in a grooming meeting, every time we work with the sales team or the marketing teams or the account teams or anyone else, every time we make a pitch or a proposal to the executive team, every time we work with stakeholders, this is the thing we are constantly doing. We are constantly evaluating trade-offs relative to ROI, right? And it's not easy. It can get messy, I know. But in a nutshell, that's what it is. So pumping out features for the sake of features ain't gonna matter unless it's actually helping drive the business forward, right? So that should be a good segue into this framework that I'm gonna hand it back to Steve to talk about because one of the things I'm not sharing a spoiler here, but one of the things I know I've lost track of how many product management conversations I've had where so much of the focus is on the build side, right? Delivery and build side, feature development, all that, and there's this whole other aspect that is missed. That's one of the things I love about this pinwheel. So sorry, I'll stop talking. Steve, I'll hand it back to you to walk us through this.
Cool, cool, cool. Well, when I started doing independent consulting, I needed a way of talking about product management. And I brought a bunch of consultants like me, some trainers, some practitioners, some VPs together. And we realized that whenever anybody wants to define the role, they almost always create like a stage gate process, which, first you do this and then you do this, and it's all very horizontal and sequential. And that's not what my product management's been like. But what I find about this framework, which, by the way, if you're a consultant or a like a product ops person in your organization, this is free to use and share. So anyway, I think I've got a slide that breaks out these parts, but the core of product management is continuous learning. One of the phrases that I really like is identifying friction. When we identify friction for our users, there's an opportunity to improve the product. But we also have to identify friction for our buyers. And let me give you a good example. I need to replace 2 windows in my house, and I've got like 150 windows in my house. But anyway, I just have these 2 I want to replace. I called the guy comes out, he looks at all these windows, and I'm like, don't get excited here. It's just these 2. And he measured some stuff and did all his thing and then disappeared. I've never heard back from him. I think he was thinking, oh my gosh, I've landed an elephant, and he, hadn't. And, I've got some friction here. So I've had to go to another vendor, and I've lost a month. By the time the windows are in, it's going to be December or January. But we learn about friction in the buying process. We learn about friction in the using process. And oh, by the way, we learn about friction in the selling process. It's a lot of people say, gosh, darn it, our salespeople are just order takers. And that's exactly what I want them to be. I want to build a product that sells itself. And so the salesperson's job becomes helping them configure their solution, not trying to push a solution because that's the only thing they have in their bag. Let's move on. So here we go. We start with defining the business problems we want to solve, right? And then, this is the part everybody skips, commit the resources to solve them. It's like, oh, could your development team do this on the side? A team I worked with recently, the VP of sales came in to a product manager and described in the course of 45 minutes, basically, let's recreate. Let's create a thing kind of like LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And the product manager in this story is going, wait, you think I have 50 or 500 developers standing by waiting for your dumbass idea in here? And by the way, why does anybody need a LinkedIn? We already hate the one we have. Why would we want another one? And then once you have committed the team, the product manager, we then start describing these problems, not features. Describe the problems we're trying to solve. Like a team I worked with a few years ago, they said, they told us the feature. Could you change the GUI or something? Could you change the user interface for me? And what they discovered was, doesn't matter. Product manager restated the problem in a business outcome, and that is, could we shorten the implementation cycle? And by challenging the dev team with that, then they went from 3-month implementation to 3 weeks implementation. So when we describe problems and we give scenarios and stories and personas, then when we come to creating, it's not about build me this feature. Next slide. It's not about building this feature. It's empowering your team and making sure they're working on the most important priorities. I know we live in a world of change, but if you're really organized and procedurally, new ideas can come in and go straight to the top of the queue if you're continually prioritized while we're creating. And then while creating is happening, another whole project begins, and that is preparing the rest of the team. And notice these facets all overlap with one another because you're not doing it serially. You're doing a little bit of this and a little bit of that as we go along. So we need to prepare the people who are going to get the product in the hands of customers. That may be in a commercial product, that may be sales teams, but in a in a digital or an IT environment, we still have to prepare the people who are going to support the people who use our product. And then we're ready to deliver. And so it really irritates me when I hear product managers and developers say, we're the delivery team. No, you're not. You're the creation team. You haven't delivered anything. You've released it, but you haven't launched it, right? You've compiled it, but you haven't prepared. And I think part of the problem, and this is the ramp that I'm working my way to, is the next slide, is product managers think that they're the creators. And that's fine. Go be a creator. I mean, that's what a product engineer is. It's an engineer who wishes he had a decent product manager, I guess. But that's just one bit of the scope of product management. So here's this Quartz Open framework. It's free to use and free to share. And I find that we're spending most of our time in the gray areas, describe and create. And most of us are not spending nearly enough time in prepare and deliver. And frankly, not really in define or commit. It's like, we've got this thing that we've been building. I'm just going to feed more features into the feature factory. What's next? There we go. And this is the area I think that is missing the most is truly a product strategy. And I've talked to so many who say, well, I don't think we have a product strategy. Well, hey, product manager, get one, right? But one of the things I'm seeing is product marketing is saying, well, if product management's not going to do product strategy, well, I guess we'll do it. What's next? Most product managers are spending the majority of their time in product planning, just describing and creating, and completely ignoring the next phase, which is delivery. Preparing the team, preparing the go-to-market teams, preparing the customer-facing teams, and then measuring once we get it delivered, are we getting the results that we promised? So that's the essence of the Quartz Open framework. Do I have anything else?
Yeah, but before we go on though, because I
Sure.
think there were a couple of really important things that I wanted to add a few things.
Cool.
I'm just gonna go backwards for a second on this one. So like you were talking about commit. One of my favorite ones also is when you get the request, can you just squeeze it in?
Right.
Can you just squeeze it into the next sprint or the next release? It's like, we're at capacity. We will always be at capacity. I mean, even if we got, and then sometimes I work with a founder who's like, well, what do you need? Do you need more resources? I'll get more developers. Like, oh, you're just going to get more developers just like that because, they're just freely available. They grow on
Right.
trees.
Yeah,
But
it's
I remember a
proven.
CFO
Having
once told me there was fortunately, that founder worked with a really smart CFO who tried to educate him on, listen, we are spending X million right now on R&D. We can go and get more resources and spend another $1 million, and guess what? We just have a new constraint. We
Mhm.
will always have a constraint. We will always be having to make the trade-off and the balance. So there is no extra squeeze or anything like that,
Right.
right? And the other things that you were talking about, like the create side, one of the things that I think Agile has ended up doing, we talk about user stories, and you mentioned stories, problem stories. I think one of the things that everyone got wrapped around is with these user story templates from Agile. Actually, what happened is that people start describing the features then because of the acceptance criteria or definition
Mhm.
of done. So now they're going in, instead of describing the problem, they're going and actually defining
Yeah.
this,
Yeah.
and it becomes just a new form of a tech spec.
Yeah. Well, most user stories read, as a user, I want this feature so I can have this feature I want.
Yeah. And the last thing I'll
Not
just
very helpful.
add, sorry.
Not helpful. Right.
Yeah, the last thing I'll just add quick is, especially at this point on the product growth, right? So go-to-market side is one that I think a lot of product management teams just completely, they're so focused on the development side.
Mhm.
We need to think, what's the point of developing something if nobody's going to buy it, if the people don't even know about it?
Right.
There's a whole effort, and this is not just producing release notes. Like I've been in teams where all they did was they pumped out release notes and like, well, yeah, we told the customer. Well, what? Hold on. Have you empowered what about empowering the sales teams? What about telling marketing, hey, here's how we got to position this thing in the marketplace. These are the benefits, right? What about empowering support? Because they're inevitably going to get the phone call, right? So how do we empower support to be able to properly support the product, let alone pricing and all of those things? So yeah,
Right. And so I'm not completely, well, I'm a little bit concerned. I'm concerned about AI in this instance. Stupid people are deciding that AI can replace people. And we're going to find out in 18 months that that was a huge mistake. But on the other hand, if the work you're doing can be done by AI, you probably are going to get replaced. But what AI can't bring us is human insight. And Tom's heard me say this 1,000 times. Uh, if you're not engaging with customers to understand friction, then what value are you? I mean, if you're just typing up what somebody else says, we're back to office space. So you get the specifications to the customer and take them down to the technical team. Well, no, not really. I sometimes they send me a fax or an email, but every customer conversation is research if you learn from it and write it down. And you want to be as a product manager, you want to be as a product manager, the people person that Tom just shared, uh, the expert on customers. Salespeople are expert on prospects, but we need to be expert in the sales team, the buyers, the users, and the technical users who are worried about things like, technical debt and security and some of the other things that people are unaware of. One of my other favorite jokes is for technical debt is I want to replace the carpet, but unfortunately my roof leaks. So I really have to fix the roof before I replace the carpet. And salespeople hate to hear that, but that's the reality. What you got next?
I'd love to do just a quick show of hands from folks. How many of you, when was the last time? Actually, have any of you recently talked to a customer? When was the last time? Let's just have a show of hands if you recently talked to a customer. One, two, three, four, five, six. Okay.
I don't know if that's the same person clicking the same thing over and over again, but well done if it's a bunch of us.
It was, but unfortunately, it was a minority. Like it
Uh,
didn't show up on my screen. I could see all of them, but
uh.
it was unfortunately a minority, which is, which is hurtful.
Well, I did a training a while back and I asked that question, and the majority said that they had never spoken to a customer, which really makes you wonder, what is your value add here? What is
Yeah.
your differentiator? In some of the product management road mapping tools, all you do is click a button, it'll make user stories for you. So
I
uh,
think
your
there's
human your human judgment has to be able to look at that user story and say, well, this is bunk, this is terrible, or hey, this is good. I'm glad I didn't have to write it.
We'll pause for questions in a second, but I think there's a couple of really important points to add here, which is on the customer interaction point. 100% product managers need to get in front of customers. There is a responsibility if any of you are in a leadership position, one of the things I hear from PM leaders, they'll say, my product managers don't engage with customers. And I'll kind of put it back on them and say, well, is that because of lack of training, skill, or have you created the environment, the structure? Have you greased the wheels? Have you built the organizational relationships to allow that to happen? So I'm sure, like, raise your hand if you've been in this situation. You come into an organization, you want to get in front of customers, and you get blocked by sales, account management, customer success, or support, right? So I see one person has raised their hand. I've been in that situation several times. Yeah, now I see people raising their hands. Yeah. So if you're an individual PM, you can try and break through, but it is hard. So if you are in a leadership role, so first of all, you got to elevate that to your leadership.
Yeah.
Now you can use guerrilla tactics to get around that, right? You got to build your own relationships. Don't just sit back and rely on like, well, it's not my manager's job and I can't do anything, right? I'm just going to go back to being that product janitor. But if you're in a leadership role, that is a big part of your job. If you're coming into an environment where you're not getting, you got to like go, you're a VP of product, you got to go to the VP of sales, you got to go to the VP of account management and say, hey, how can we make this work? I've got to get my PMs in front of these customers, in front of prospects, in front of our existing customers. I understand that you're worried about disrupting the sales process or you've got a delicate customer relationship, right? So, but that's part of your job is to work out those relationships, right? The other thing that I wanted to point out was, back to this pinwheel. I think, on the topic of AI, right? Certainly, like we can use, I think, which one was it? I mean, AI can certainly assist. Um, Here we go. This was the one. Yeah. AI can certainly assist in every stage. Now there's, I don't know, a plethora. Steve and I were just talking about this before we got live. There's a ton of tools out there, right? We can certainly use them, right? But it's without taking away the human parts that really matter, as Steve was talking about. And that's the really important part, right? They're just tools. That's the key thing. They don't define the role. So let me leave with some practical takeaways for leaders and product managers. And then we'll pause for questions and commentary. So if you are a product leader, going back to roles, evaluate your product managers based on what actually drives outcomes and results. So know the outcomes and results that are respected and valued in your company. That can vary business to business, right? Of course, top line revenue, profit, we know that, right? But know what results are important at your company and then teach your PMs. If you have a weekly meeting or monthly, whatever you do with your PMs, right? You have to like, and it's not a one and done. I found it is a constantly reinforcing thing, right? Including even sometimes in your one-on-ones. Sometimes you have to help your PMs connect their individual work back to the bigger picture, right? I encourage you to avoid all these hype-driven hiring traps. I know like somebody from Google posted this thing is like, now we're only going to be, all our PM interviews are going to be vibe coding interviews. Okay, well, you know what? Maybe that works for Google. Fine, whatever, right? But I've got my own thoughts on that, but whatever, right? Point is, you got to figure out, look, I'm about to make a super expensive hire. PMs are expensive. You as a PM leader is expensive, right? It's got to deliver some ROI. So what is it this role has to accomplish? If you're just hiring a product janitor, back to Steve's janitor, then don't hire a product manager, go hire like a project manager or a product janitor type thing. But if you're hiring a product manager, take the time to audit your own PM job descriptions. I know we're super busy. We've got a billion things on our plate, but this is one of the most important things you do as a hiring manager. I would actually go and craft my own job descriptions. I wouldn't just blanket accept whatever HR is doing, right? Define the roles and expectations clearly and coach PMs, right? It's an ongoing responsibility, as I was saying. And if you are an individual PM, what can you do? Focus on focus your skill building on high impact areas. Sure, learn vibe coding and the tools. If you want to go get a job at Meta and Meta now is going to do a vibe coding interview, well, you got to play their game because you decided you want to go get a job at Meta, right? Fine, whatever. There's a pragmatic side to this. But at the same time, the things that Steve was talking about, the ability to get good customer and market insights, developing your business acumen, your communication skills. Steve mentioned Rich. Last week we had Rich on the show. He talked about money stories. Learn how to do that, right? Develop those leadership skills. Do your job search without chasing every trend. Don't just chase every poorly defined and red. If the role is not well defined, there might be a red flag. Be focused in your efforts. Be pragmatic and build confidence and clarity in your career path. Always align with outcomes. We did an earlier episode with Nils Davis where he literally deconstructed a resume and showed how you can take a resume and tie it back to outcomes and results versus sort of I did my job, I did my job, I did my job, right? So, with that, one last thing. We'll pause for questions in just a second, but again, If you're interested in more, I go in a lot more depth on my newsletter. There's a free tier if you want that, but there's a paid subscription. You can also sign up as an Inner Circle member. The paid subscription, every Saturday you get in-depth tactics. I go really deep, guys. Give you actual tactics, templates. There's a monthly Q&A. There's one with me tomorrow. You get discounts. There's an Inner Circle membership tier where you get far more resources. We do a monthly roundtable and group coaching. You also get additional resources from events like this, right? Um, and right now I'm running a 20% off discount, so you can take advantage of that if you'd like. And then go get Steve's book. And anything you want to say, add about the book, Steve, or anything else you got going on?
Well, I actually wrote the earlier version of this book in the early 2000s, I think, and realized that two things: the world has changed a lot, um, and the world hasn't changed much at all. The first product manager I met was in the 1980s, and she was an MBA. She was a business person. And in my first product management role of my own, I sat down with the developers and said, "Hey, I'm hoping to do well here. How can I contribute?" And they said, "Don't tell us what to build. Tell us about the business. Tell us about personas and their problems. Tell us what marketing we're doing and how our sales are going and the results of your win-loss analysis." And I'm like, hallelujah, I know how to do all those things. I don't know how to tell you what to build because you're probably smarter at that than I am. And some of that story is kind of rolled into this new strategic role of product management ebook available on our website. And there's the QR code and a short link to get the ebook.
Awesome. And you guys, I'll send you out. I'll email you this QR code link afterwards as well when I send out the replay. So yeah, what questions do y'all have? We have like 10 or 7 minutes. Just so you know, I can go over a little bit. I'm gonna at 1 o'clock I'll call time. But I'm happy to linger if there are still folks if we didn't get to your question. But go ahead and put it in the chat or raise your virtual hand and I will call on you. And we'll go through questions. What questions do y'all have? No questions. Wow, we were that
Tom,
good.
you've always got something smart to say. Why don't you kick things off and
I,
loosen up everybody
I don't
else?
know how smart it is, but I think we talked about the AI and product management functions, and I guess one question I would have is, how are we going to respond to that? Because your people connection elements are absolutely primary. There's no question that that is critical. And we should be learning how to use the AI tools, but I think that there is a huge problem in thinking that AI is going to replace product management. So, how do we respond as product managers when people read an article in Business Week, if Business Week still exists, that says you can fire your product managers and replace them with a $20 subscription to Anthropic?
Shardul, you want to start?
No, you go ahead, Stephen.
All
I'll
right.
jump in here.
AI is really good at tasks. It's not really good at roles. It's not. Oh, here's a way of getting there. AI is the equivalent of secondary research. Asking AI to do something, it's going to rely on what it was trained on. So when we moved to this house, we had a nice little Ace Hardware store right across the street. And every Saturday I'm over there and he's like, "Steve, what are you working on this weekend?" And I'd have a whole bunch of stuff in my cart and he'd go through the cart and say, "Oh, all this is crap. Get rid of this. You don't want to use styrofoam paint brushes. What are you? Lunatic?" And so he'd do all this his stuff. And so, I was painting much better than I had in the past. And it was really, really great. And then within a year, we got a Lowe's and a Home Depot and a Builder Square and something else. I can't remember what the other chain was. And my guy went out of business. And the following year, so did all the chain stores. They closed all their stores. Now I have no hardware store. And it's because the chains read somebody's market research. And they all read the same research that my zip code was blowing up with building. And that's what's wrong with AI. It's going to tell you what common knowledge is. But I hope what we're doing is not common. And one other ranty sort of an answer. A few years ago, one of my friends told me they had just laid off the entire product management department. 3 months later, they called all the product managers and said, "Would you please come back? We just figured out all the things that you do." So, back to Shardul's earlier point, it's
like when my wife goes away for the weekend and I find out all the things she does around the house.
Right. Well, yeah, I recently cooked, baked for the first time in 20 years. And I'm like, where is everything? But anyway.
So
So Shardul's point was, about getting clarity on these roles, and the product leaders need to be socializing that to make sure that VP of sales knows how we bring value, and VP of development knows how we bring value. And we do things that are different than those other roles. But of course, one more rant, and Shardul, I'll really let you go. I think in many companies, the CEO thinks the ideal company size is one. Himself and a bunch of AI.
Yeah.
Dream on, my friend.
I know we got a couple more questions. I'll answer real quick, Tom, my perspective, which is, so some articles written in Forbes or whatever you said, Business Week or whatever, like, my answer, who cares? And I'm not just trying to be flippant, but like, it depends who's asking. If it is a hiring manager or a company that actually believes in that, then you know what? As an individual product manager, maybe I don't want to apply to that company. That may not be a good company, because likely they will end up finding out exactly what Steve talked about, right? If it's just some random person or somebody else, then my question is, do I really need to convince them? Like, do they have any authority over me or the role or anything? If they don't, then it's like, well, what do I care? Because this kind of stuff is always going to be out there. I think I've lost track of, like, every time on LinkedIn there's a post, product management is dead. And I'm like, oh, is it Tuesday already? Right? So, all right. So we had one person in the chat. We got a few people raising their hands. Sheldon, are there any PM frameworks being oh man, we love our frameworks. We're so obsessed with frameworks. Frameworks being proposed or evolving that incorporate elements of AI tools like Agile AI or Scrum AI. I I don't know, man. Like, I don't know that I don't know that I care. I'm sorry. I know there are a lot of AI tools, and I did see a post very recently. I won't say who, but somebody is now trying to advocate the new quote product AI product operating model. So stay tuned. That is now coming to a podcast near you. So
And the
anyways.
truth of the matter is, product management hasn't changed since it was invented in the 1930s. It's still a business role, and the technology changes all the time. I don't know if you remember, but we used to have mobile product managers and blockchain product managers and .com product managers. And, it's just product management. Oh, data product managers. I forgot that one.
Yeah. Quick time check. I know it's top of the hour. Thanks all for joining. If you need to bail, go ahead. I'm Steven. By the way, I'm willing to let you go if you have other things
I've
to
got
do.
a few
But I
minutes.
can stay on. I know there's people with questions. I will stay on for another 10 to 15 minutes to try and get to all of your questions. But if you gotta go, thank you so much for attending. You will get the replay. And I'll talk to you soon. Sati, did I
Yes, sure.
did I get your name
Sati.
right?
Yeah,
Okay. I think I've seen you before. Welcome back. Yeah.
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 Last week, right. So my question, Shardul, is I get the like product management is people oriented. You do first-hand research, that part, right? But taking kind of a systemic view, what a person was able to do in say like 1 month, right, is now with the help of AI, is able to do in a couple of days, right?
Sure.
And which means the supply and demand will somewhere down the line start kicking in, and then there'll be pressure on the product management function, right, as such, in terms of now the demand that has been, right? So my question is, well, how do you see this impacting this role? Because the demand would go down eventually. This is one aspect, right? And the other aspect is also with experience, right? What you were able to do based on like 10 years of domain experience now is literally, I mean, it's not perfect. There are gaps, but those are easier to address than starting from scratch, right? So these two things are kind of nagging me in terms of how this would turn out in
Yeah,
like.
see, like, so great question. So, see, look, there's always a push to be more efficient,
Mm,
be able to do more with less. That has never changed. There's always, it's a hard job. I
mm,
mean, business is hard, product management is hard, it will always be hard. It's not for the faint of heart, right?
right.
Let's be honest. There's always going to be a push to be more efficient. You
Mm-hmm.
know, when PowerPoint was invented, so my dad was a management consultant, and in order to produce a presentation, they had a graphics department. They
Mm.
would have to send the internal graphics department their requirements, who would then produce the slides.
The overhead
You would put on those
presentation.
old projectors with the,
Right, right.
and of course, if it was wrong, you go back and forth. So they would have to plan a presentation months in advance. Then PowerPoint comes along, and boom, and like you could literally in 5 minutes produce a slide deck, right?
Right.
And then it got better and better. And so then it became, okay, well, product manager, you've got to do a presentation. You got to know how to do a slide deck, right? Agile came along promising, hey, you don't have to do waterfall anymore. Everything is going to be streamlined so much quicker. We can do 2-week release cycles. Isn't it awesome, right? So we had to learn how to do that, right? So, now before we couldn't record events like this. So somebody's there, I would have had to have a second person scribbling notes furiously and producing them. Now I got Fathom and Zoom. They're going to record, take notes for me, and I'm set to go. So there's always going to be this push to be more efficient. Steve said the CEO's dream is I only need one person who does everything, right? That sort of deal.
Mm.
Because again, not to kind of bottom line it, but it goes down to profitability. I want the most
Right.
profitable revenue possible. So the more I can do, then drive efficiency. So as a product manager, sure, yeah, if I can prove that I can be more efficient, but know
Mm.
that that will always be a push. But to have demonstrate real value, like if you came to me and if I'm looking at you as a candidate to come on my team versus someone else, and the fact that maybe you can vibe code, use AI tools, but here's this other person who can actually deliver real results, guess who I'm
Mm.
probably going to pay attention to?
Right.
So I think that's an important distinction. Anything you
I
want to
have
add?
Right.
one note to that as well. And I 90% of developers are using AI tools to improve their productivity.
Mm.
And I think one of the biggest things we're going to see is one developer doing work that used to be done by 5 or 10 people,
Mm.
and product management is going to become the backlog of
Okay.
what do you want me to work on now? And so
Mm.
I've seen a number of people advocating one product manager per developer
Mm. Okay.
instead of one product manager for 8 developers, which is the
Right.
current average. And I think that's probably right. And yet some people are saying, well, no, why don't we just put them together and we'll only have one person, a product manager / product engineer.
Mm.
But that's
Difficult.
two sides of the same coin. I mean, one is in the problem space and the other is in the solution space. And it's really hard when you're in solutioning to think about, well, hey, let me go
Sure.
interview the market or let me understand the friction, because it's so fun and so satisfying to create. I got pulled into ChatGPT earlier today and spent an hour and a half doing something that didn't need to be done at all. But I had a great time.
Right.
But I wasn't looking at, well, what are some of the other things I should be doing with my time? And with that note, I'll let you go because I actually have another call. Thank you for inviting me to.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Uh,
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Cody, I know you've been super patient.
Oh,
So
so long.
happy to answer. See you, Steve. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, no worries. I just had a question. How do you see it differently for internal tools or internal PMs? I would say, I don't know if that's just another job title like you explained, like where you're pushing out tools for your internal
Yeah.
organization to use versus outside? So like, how are you leveraging or like monitoring ROI on things like that? Is it efficiency gains? So like now you can go to this feature or dashboard or tool within the organization to be more efficient versus having to, build something yourself or do something yourself. Did you see the same kind of like what a PM is for that role versus the typical PM?
So the short answer is yes, I do see it as the same. Now, it's an excellent question. To your point, yeah, there are a lot of product managers such as yourself who work on, call it internal tools or internal products, right, for internal users. I think I have, in fact, a newsletter article coming up on that. So obviously, you're not driving revenue, that sort of thing. But here, the important thing, so there's two things. In terms of tools, sure, you could use the same tools to make your aspects of your job more efficient, right? Whatever that is, writing requirements or doing research or whatever it might be, right? But in terms of what you're going for, you're still going for some ROI. Remember, there's a bunch of resources being committed to the development of that internal tool or that internal system. That means there's budget behind it. There's money behind it. The company is expecting something, some outcome as a result, right? So we got to be savvy and we got to understand what those results may be. And there's two sides to it, right? One is, okay, if we're developing this tool or system, we're going to commit, it's going to take 6 months to build. Maybe that's $1 million or whatever it is. And then it's ongoing support and maintenance. Why is that investment worth it? What outcomes are we hoping to achieve? If it's efficiency, how do we measure that? And then on the other side, what benefits is it going to provide to our users, right? So the users were living in an old world where they were doing some work and maybe it was inefficient or they weren't able to do the things they were able to do. And now it's going to be more efficient, right? And there's ways to be able to measure that to show, yeah, this is actually turning out to be a good thing. So one quick example I'll give you is that we were working on a tool for our sales team. And so their ability to be able to enter orders, it was really, really inefficient. It would take them a long time, and they were super frustrated. So the easy thing is say, hey, we just need a better UI. But the real ROI behind that was to show how it impacted the sales cycle. By enabling them to enter their sales orders quicker, by reducing the time from literally hours to like minutes, we could shorten the sales cycle, which means getting to close and as a result, getting to revenue. We've now accelerated that. So not only, we were measuring in terms of user satisfaction and delight and those things, but also showing that material, and that's just one example, right? Material impact. Or we did one where we were trying to drive efficiencies in the call center, right? In terms of how they were able to service and support customers. Those calls cost money. They take a long time. And the longer the call, the longer it takes to satisfy the customer request, the more dissatisfied the customer is going to be. So right there, it lends itself to certain metrics that we can go against, right? So hopefully that was helpful.
Yeah, no, very helpful. Thanks.
Yeah, I thought I saw one more in the chat. Maybe I lost it. Oh, uh, Hassan, did I pronounce your name correctly?
Yep, you got it right, Shardul.
Okay. From your experience, what's been the most effective way to educate and maintain expectations about what product management does with others? What a good question. Boy, I think I have an event. We talked a little bit about this, Rich and I did, and I think I have some events coming up to talk more about this. So here's the bottom line on this. Going to leadership and others and lecturing them on, sorry, let me restart. On the one hand, we do have to educate them on, hey, here's the role of product management and what we do. But the biggest thing is we need to prove it. And we need to communicate it in the language they understand. Most of the times what we end up doing, and I'm not saying you're doing this, Hassan, you may not be, but most of the time what we do is we go and we talk our PM tech lingo. We start talking about process, we talk about stories, we talk about product thinking or product sense or product mindset and all this sort of stuff. We talk about, I've got the backlog, or we talk about, well, if we do this, we're going to disrupt this project. And here's the reality is they don't care, they don't understand. All they understand is customers and revenue. So we have to translate that into what Rich Marinoff calls money stories, right? Into economic arguments. And we have to do that before the fact and after the fact, right? Before the fact, in terms of like you get a feature request and now there's a trade-off, right? Or you are trying to decide, hey, what's the next set of things we're going to build, right? Why are we building it? What outcome is it going to help produce? And that gets into the whole thing about being savvy on the strategy, the business goals, the business that you're in, the business model. But then after the fact as well, which is after we've done it, to point back and say, here are the outcomes we did or did not get. Because I know sometimes we're forced to do things that we know don't make any sense, but we just got to bite the bullet and do it, right? Because, some hippo or somebody from leadership is coming and saying, we got to build this widget. It's going to be great, right? Do it. All right, fine. But then, after the fact, we got to go and say, well, did we really get the results we were hoping for? So there's a whole thing about like being able, in fact, our next week, next Thursday, this time, me and Mike Smart are going to be talking about exactly this topic. How do you connect your product work to outcomes that matter? Right? That is the conversation, and that is how you start moving the needle and making them realize, oh, wait a minute, you know what? Yeah, product management is like every time they come, they understand the business. Like the biggest knock on product management is don't understand customers, don't understand the business. Right? Even on the customer side, oftentimes we get wrapped up in, oh, I got to go get data and do this amazing research. And of course, that's important. But even just bringing anecdotal information, this kind of goes back to Steve's point about the human element engaging with customers. Like I got an audience, this was early in my career. Lucky me, I got an audience with the executive team. And basically, I was going to tell them, hey, this product we built is actually crap. It's terrible. Users hate it. We need to revamp it. And what we really needed to do was build a better UI. And originally, I got a lot of pushback, lipstick on a pig, and like we're just looking at pretty screens. Is that worth the investment? And what I did was I put up on slides quotes from users, and even if I got a recording, I recorded one user using it, and I boiled it down to like a 2-minute clip, a montage. And the CEO was there, and the rest of the senior staff was there, and I just did this, and it was 5 minutes, and then at the end they were like, "Yeah, okay, we've got a problem. Yeah, we get it, right?" And now I got the question, hey, how statistically significant is this relative to our user base? And I said, and I was honest, and I said, hey, I've not had a chance to do that work in time for this meeting. Is one of my action items. But I wanted to share with you, these are our actual customers, and this is what they're saying, and I wanted to share that with you. And that was a big part of then getting the budget approval. Cool. All right, I'm gonna close it here because we're 15 minutes over. Thanks, guys. I'll send out the recording. Hope you enjoyed this. Thanks so much. Enjoy the rest of your day. Have a great week. Enjoy your weekend. See you later.
Thank you.